Let's begin here. The matter between Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi and a former chairperson of Productivity SA and CEO of Thuja Capital, Mthunzi Mdwaba, today returns to the High Court sitting in Pretoria. Nxesi filed a court application in November for the courts to set aside the R5 billion Thuja Capital Unemployment Insurance Fund job creation contract. This is over a deal between the UIF and the company that has been marred by a 500 million rand bribery allegation brought by the businessman. Nxesi, along with two other ministers, have been accused by Mdwaba of attempting to solicit a 500 million rand kickback on the R5 billion contract and for firing him on the refusal to grant the bribes. SABC News economics reporter Katlego Legodi is in court and joins us live. Katlego, thank you so much for your time. Perhaps bring us up to speed in terms of what happened previously when this matter sat.
A very good morning to you, Unati, and to our viewers at home. We'll be coming to you live from the High Court here in Pretoria, and this is where that matter between Mthunzi Mdwaba, the businessman, and the Minister of Labour here, being Minister Thulas Nxesi, is expected to get underway any time from now. We're coming to you from outside Court 4A, where a Judge Murray will read or go into this particular matter, picking up from what happened the last time. So the last time when we were here, we saw Mr. Mdwaba still pushing here ahead in terms of making sure that this contract is adhered to by the Department of Employment and Labour. But Minister Nxesi is still persisting that this particular, there should be a declaratory order coming through from the courts that will set aside this R5 billion jobs contract. What happened the last time was that there were outstanding documents that Mdwaba argued before Judge Murray that they needed to be really solicited from the minister's legal team, but then also the legal team just challenging this assertion to say from as late or as early as last year, November, some of these documents were furnished, hence there should not be any further delay, looking at the fact that the minister approached this court on an urgent basis. I'm going to bring into the conversation now Mr. Trevor Harting, who'll just go into detail about what happened the last time that we were here in court. We see the minister still just pushing through with the case here. He wants the court to decide on this particular R5 billion contract, and Mr. Mdwaba is not backing down, hence he wants the court to also more or less make sure that there's just that the court basically more or less solidify this particular contract with Thuja. Welcome to the SABC. Let us in on what happened the last time and where we find ourselves where this case is concerned now.
The last time when we were here at the Pretoria High Court, the interlocutory application that was brought about by Mr. Mdwaba requesting for further documentation to be discovered. These documents, as mentioned before, were documents that were served on Mr. Mdwaba and his legal team as far back as November 2023 already. So his application, he brought his application the last time we were here, and the High Court dismissed his application with punitive costs. Thereafter, we got into the main matter, and the counsel for Minister Nxesi then started arguing our matter. The matter was then postponed, and that is why we are here today to continue with arguments, both from the minister's side and then also to hear arguments from Mr. Mdwaba and his team.
Is it still the minister's assertion that there were, more or less processes that were flouted in the awarding of this particular contract? And maybe as we saw this matter get underway, are you able to just let us in on then who would we see being called here to testify on the side of the minister as a witness?
So on the side of the minister, what is going to be serving is the minister's founding papers, and as well as the arguments that will be brought about by counsel that's acting on behalf of the minister. I think we need to understand that this is the minister's application, right? So at this point in time, there is no one that will be called except for arguments that will be heard from the opposition side, if I can call it that, aside from Mr. Mdwaba.
Do we know if the papers have been furnished in full as we speak right now? Something that held up the case the last time, and are we expecting any further delays, or really what's happening right now is us seeing the merits of this particular contract being argued before the judge?
As of last night, all documents were still with the court, but we don't know if anything new is going to be introduced this morning. We are also yet to see or hear in the court if there's any new things that would be introduced by Mr. Mdwaba and his team. From our side, everything is still the same. We still maintain the same arguments. We still maintain the same documentation, and we are going to further hear arguments on what has been submitted to the court from the side of the Minister this morning.
And the status of the contract as we speak right now, as we see this particular court process get underway, does this mean that as we speak, that particular contract with Thuja stands?
I would not say that the contract stands. That contract has been suspended, and the court will give us direction insofar as whether this is lawful and enforceable or whether it's unlawful and enforceable. And the Minister's view and assertion is that it is unlawful and unenforceable. And that is why we are here, and we are hoping that the court would adjudicate on this matter and hear arguments to that effect to then pronounce on it so that we can move on with this matter.
Mr. Trevor Hutton, thank you very much, sir, for your time. The court process is expected to get underway any time from now, Unathi. But just at the center of what is happening here is a jobs scheme that was administered here by the UIF working with Productivity SA. Remember that Mthunzi Mdwaba was the chairperson of Productivity SA at the time, and that's when we saw Thuja Capital as well just working to get this particular contract to create jobs for mainly the youth of this particular country. If you look at what happened earlier on in the week, you can still see that young people are still bearing the brunt of a high unemployment in the country right now. And Mr. Mdwaba still maintains that particular contract, really that job scheme was going to come through to close this gap. But Judge Murray will more or less oversee this particular process, and towards the end of the day we'll get a sense of where this matter lies between Mr. Mdwaba and the minister, because he's also calling on Mr. Mdwaba to refrain from just slandering or more or less giving out, casting aspersions around the character of the minister, saying that the court needs to also pronounce on that. Unathi?
All right, Katlego, thank you so much for that. Of course, that was our economics reporter, Katlego Legodi.